Welcome to the Back in the Day podcast with the Metro Archives. I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. I'm Sarah Arntz, and I have my colleague Grace Holm with me today, and we are interviewing Giancarlo Guerrero. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfectly.
Perfect. He's the music director of the Nashville Symphony. Under his direction, the Nashville Symphony has commissioned and premiered nearly 24 pieces and released 21 commercial recordings, which have garnered 18 Grammy nominations and 11 Grammy Awards across multiple categories. He is in his final season with the symphony, so we thought this might be a good time to interview him about his long and very successful career, specifically focusing on his time here in Nashville. So with that, my first question, what's your origin story of becoming a music director? What inspired that?
Well, I started music as a hobby, something to do after school. When my family and I moved to Costa Rica, I was 12 years old. And like many parents will relate to this, they signed me up to the youth symphony just because they wanted to keep me busy. And I was in the back of the orchestra as a percussionist. And I was very happy and making fun of conductors. And, and at some point I dropped the stick and moved to the front and became a conductor. But in reality, the fact that I became a conductor was very accidental because I went to school at Baylor University in Texas. They gave me a full scholarship and was looking to pursue my percussion career. And one of the classes that you take as a music major is conducting, along with music history and counterpoint and everything else. One of the classes is conducting. And I actually avoided it as much as I could just because I had no interest in it. But finally, my junior year, I couldn't avoid it. So I finally took the class. And I have all the videos of all my classes, and I could not have taken the class less seriously, I think, even if I tried. At the end of the class, the conducting teacher came to me at the end of the semester, and he said, I don't know what it is that maybe you're used to having a stick in your hand, you have a good rhythm, which for a conductor is imperative. He said, you may want to pursue this. You have a kind of a natural talent for this. And honestly, I didn't know what he was talking about. And I've seen the videos, and I still don't know what he was talking about. But this was a professor that I highly, highly, highly respected. And I took his advice. And kind of on the side, as a hobby, I started studying scores and looking at things from a conductor's point of view. And as they say, little by little, one thing started moving in that direction. And eventually I dropped my sticks and became a conductor.
Wow. Okay. So I assume that's originally, being a music director, that's originally what brought you to Nashville, or was there something else?
No, so my trip to Nashville was another one of those things that I'd like to think about, that fate had a lot to do with it. And it's almost like being in the right place at the right time, and a combination of many different factors. But I came to Nashville to guest conduct in 2004. Actually, no, 2005, sorry. And this was May. This was the end of the season, and Maestro Schermerhorn was still the music director of the orchestra, and the hall was being built at the time, the Schermerhorn. And at the time, the orchestra was playing at TPAC, which was their longtime home. And they didn't bring many guest conductors. If I remember, they maybe brought 1 or 2 guest conductors a year because the season was shorter, and Maestro Schermerhorn kind of took care of the whole thing. So this would have been a one-off. I would have come, conducted, and that would have been it. And, And as it happens, the weekend before I arrived in Nashville for my week with the orchestra, Maestro Schermerhorn passed away, kind of unexpectedly. He'd been ill, but he kind of took a turn for the worse, and then very unexpectedly kind of passed away. So my concert, which was happening the week after, all of a sudden, you can imagine the whole tenor of the concert changed. It became a memorial concert for the maestro, the musicians, the community. Everybody was kind of in shock that this had actually happened. And here I come as a guest conductor. So in many ways, for me, it kind of created a very strong bond with the players, with the staff, with the board, that I kind of came in and, try to rally everything. And even though I never met the maestro, of course, my whole program was about honoring him. So this was May, which was the end of the season. And the next season, which would have been the 2005-2006 season, was the last season at TPAC before moving into the Schermerhorn in September of 2006. Mm-hmm. And the whole next season was already laid out and planned out with Maestro Schermerhorn conducting most of it. So after the week was over, and it went well enough that Alan Valentine, our CEO, came to me and said, listen, the orchestra liked you very much, and it seems that you also had a great time. When are you available next season? I mean, we need to fill in. Mm-hmm. And part of the trick was that the programs and the soloists, everything was laid in stone. And you could not change. So if you were able to take any program, you had to do whatever the maestro had planned. And because of how my schedule this late in the game was already kind of full, I was able to do the opening night and the final concerts at TPAC.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I came and I opened the season a few months later, and then I came and I did the last concert at TPAC before the orchestra moved into the Schermerhorn. And so it's like I said, I mean, it was almost meant to be. Of course, there was a whole process that, music director search. And on top of opening the new hall, I give a lot of credit to Alan Valentine, the CEO, and the board and everybody that they didn't want to throw that on top of the opening of the hall. So they did something that I thought was incredibly smart and remarkable, that they invited the great American conductor Leonard Slatkin, who was finishing as music director of the National Symphony in Washington, and kind of a elder statesman situation to kind of watch the shop, to open the hall and kind of, be the artistic advisor while they do a music director search.
Okay.
And so they did a couple of seasons in the hall with Maestro Slatkin kind of watching the shop, and people like me and other candidates came in, and eventually the position was offered to me, and here we are.
Oh, that's kismet right there. Before I hand it over to Grace so she can ask her questions, the one question that's kind of a tough question, so if you want to save it to the end, we can, but what do you hope your legacy in Nashville will be? Is this your last season and whatnot?
The orchestra is truly spectacular. And that has been the greatest part of my joy of every single rehearsal concert, an opportunity that I've had with these players. And as the orchestra has also changed with time, musicians retiring, new players coming in, post-COVID especially, it's a different kind of world that we live in. But I do know that one of the things that I am proudest of is that the next music director will be inheriting an amazing orchestra, a fabulous ensemble that can basically do anything. And for me, the ability to have been here while building this incredible Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, whatever you want to call it, because that's the best analogy when you conduct. You feel like you're driving this incredible machine, and they always surprise you. At the same time, I would like to think that all of our audiences that have followed us, through thick and thin, have kept with them unforgettable musical experiences. Every concert is its own universe, and I know I have some of my own favorites, but in the end, that is what we're here to provide. We're here to provide unforgettable, meaningful, moving, relevant music experiences.
Very good. Grace?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, your answer spoke to one of the things. I watched an old interview you did with Jog Siegenthaler, who is another titan of Nashville history. Mm-hmm. And you said the players in this orchestra really are the jewel behind the institution, which I love.
Well, you have to remember that when I wave the stick, it makes no sound.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. You need the players. And conducting is the only proof we have that telepathy exists. And when you show up to conduct an orchestra, like when I came to Nashville for the first time, they don't know me, I don't know them, but we're going to speak the language of music. And besides of what was going on with the whole drama with Maestro Schermerhorn's passing, we had to put a concert together.
Absolutely.
And honestly, that is what captivated me when I first arrived, that I got in front of these incredible players who, many of them were still very much in shock. And very quickly, I found out that there was an immediate chemistry with them, that you cannot manufacture that. Mm-hmm. You know how it is with human relationships. You show up, but for whatever reason, maybe it was because of the fact that was going on, they were more attentive than usual, but we hit it off from the first rehearsal. So all of the other stuff that you do as a music director, being part of the community and all that, that's all fantastic, but it has to start on stage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The magic happens on stage. The chemistry that people can see when they attend a performance, that immediate connection that you see the players, like all of us acting as one. So absolutely. I mean, without the players, us conductors, we're nothing. And in the end, what you try to do is not just so much conduct them, but inspire them. And over this very long time that I've had a pleasure of not only developing the orchestra and taking it to higher levels, I have to say that from my perspective, it's also been incredibly educational for me, because they've also made me the conductor and the musician that I am. And even though I am finishing officially, I guess I won't have a title after this. I mean, it would be naive for me to think that there's a cut. And no, I have a vested interest in the future of this incredible orchestra. This has been home for me and my family for almost 20 years now. And I look forward to returning very often as a guest. It's like when you go back to a house that you used to own in many ways, mm-hmm. and you kind of know the personalities behind it, but not longer being the music director, there's a certain freedom that comes with that. And I look forward to getting closer personally to many of these players over time, and because I've seen many of them grow families and have great careers beyond Nashville. So that fills me with a great degree of pride.
I love all of those sentiments. That's incredible and speaks a lot to the community of music and the wider community of Nashville. And one of the things that's struck me about your career is not that you just came to our city and became you yourself a part of Nashville, but how dedicated you've been to bringing others into the community. So new musicians, but commissioning over a dozen new works, elevating contemporary and underrepresented voices, the Composer Lab and Workshop. And you've already touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about why it's so important to you to bring in this wide variety of voices into our city community and the musical community.
We were talking earlier about, that what we do as art form, classical music, it's all kind of based on tradition. We carry, the teacher of my teacher of my teacher of my teacher, you go all the way back to Bach or, Mozart.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's always but that's not how you used to do it. And how, but of course, the world has changed. We don't play Beethoven symphonies the way they were played 200 years ago. Thank God. The world is different.
Absolutely.
I mean, why should we keep getting stuck? No, we evolve. And there is something to be said with anything of high art, but especially just human behavior. Anything that tends to be new is not, as human beings, is hard on us. We like what's comfortable. We like what we know. So any new experiences always come with a little bit of hesitation. And why should it be different with music? The problem is that we tend to forget that Beethoven had world premieres. And we tend to forget that Mozart had world premieres. And if you ever saw the movie Amadeus, he died penniless.
Yeah.
And he's in a cemetery that we don't even know which one. They assume, but in an unmarked grave.
Huh.
If you went to Vienna and you wanted to go pay your respects to Mozart, good luck.
I think I tried that when I was
We
there
don't
years
know.
ago.
I mean, there are, depending on which tour you take in Vienna, that they will sell you that they think it's right here and in this area. I mean, they don't know. We don't. He died penniless.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what would have happened when he died if nobody picked up the mantle? His music would have disappeared. And this is a guy, again, that kind of burned every bridge because he was the greatest genius that ever lived, and he was kind of a pain in the neck. Don't you hate people that are like they're actual geniuses and they don't mind showing it off? We hate that person. So Mozart had that ability to really, he burned every bridge. He really did. But there was a recognition that what he did artistically and musically had to be preserved. So he took it came upon the musicians that came after him to rescue. And how do you do that? By playing the music. And let's face it, his music was far ahead of his time. You should read some of the reviews that back in the day, calling that stuff like crazy and idiotic. I mean, Beethoven, his violin concerto, when it premiered, it said that, this is the work of some amateur composer. Beethoven.
Wow.
Of course, in the prism of time, it's easy to say, oh, what a great genius. But you have to remember that this was played in front of live audiences 200 plus years ago. And audiences that, here comes this Beethoven guy pushing the envelope a lot, and audiences were not ready. So to answer your question, I wish I could take credit for inventing the wheel, but I'm not doing anything different than my predecessors have done for the last 250 years. And music, to become, I guess, standard, if you want to call it that, it has to be played. It has to become normal, and it has to go through a whole process of being played in front of many different audiences, not only in Nashville, in Moscow, in Berlin, in Istanbul, in Washington, in Japan, with different orchestras, different conductors, different musicians. And little by little, I guess it becomes what we call the war horses. Well, guess what? Composers are still writing music now. The Mozarts and Beethovens of tomorrow are happening right now. And many of them, like the previous ones, are pushing the envelope and making us go, what? And only time will tell which stuff will remain. And that's not up to me. It's not up to the orchestras. It's up to the audience.
Yeah,
Audiences are the ones that decide why they love Rachmaninoff. And if you ask them why it is, it's not, oh, it's a pretty melody. No, it's deeper than that. Music has a relevance. There's something in it that connects you with it, just like any painting or like when you read a book. When you read something the second time, it's even better. And to think that first impression, it's like, that's it. No, you grow. I'm not the same person I was yesterday, and I'm going to see things differently. So as much as I love to champion the war horses, and if all we do is that, we're going to become dinosaurs.
It's true.
That's the truth.
We have to champion what's being written, which is a time capsule of our time. Composers writing music in this era, post-COVID, that when we study it 50 years and we hear it, we can make a connection. It's not in a vacuum. So this is part of the history. And as artist, myself, I see it that it is an absolute most important responsibility to give this gift to the future generations. That we not only took care of the past, but we were taking care of our future and our present by performing this music and giving these composers the voice. But as I said, I could play it a million times, and if it doesn't make any connection with the audience, there's nothing I can do. All I can do is perform it, put it in front of audiences, and then, as I say, history will decide. And that is very important. At the same time, promoting and premiering and recording and commissioning these works for Nashville. This is possible because of our audiences, our supporters, our donors. They make it possible. So they're a huge part of this. When we do our recordings, which are all live, our audience is there. And I love thinking 50 years from now, what was going on in Nashville that they were programming and playing all this music? And my grandmother was at those concerts. There's a historical connection. And somewhere there's a program signed by the composer. Imagine if you could say, oh, my great-great-grandmother was in Vienna when Beethoven's Fifth premiere, and somewhere there's a picture or a drawing with Beethoven. Wouldn't you want that?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
absolutely.
As I said, I wish I could say I reinvented the wheel. I'm doing what my predecessors have done for the last 300, 400 years, and I hope that my successors will continue doing that.
It's a great answer.
Yeah, I love that. And you have, and obviously I think we're biased, but you have such an archival perspective on music and tradition. I think a lot of what you said about music, we can identify within our own work.
Contextual, yeah.
Yeah, we're not reinventing wheels. We're just putting
carrying
the next stepping
it into
stone.
the future, yeah.
And you have to, as I said, this is a gift to the future. This is not ours. But those of us who are here, that oral history, of being here when the hall opened and before and my arrival here, well, let's hear from the people that actually were there and how this all came about.
Yeah.
And you have to keep a good record of it. I mean, history, nowadays, I think as the world has gotten smaller, there's a danger that now people can create their own histories. But no, you cannot. There is something that is very well established, and it doesn't matter how much you try to move it around. There are some things that are accepted fact, and they are because, we have enough proof of that. And music is the same way. I mean, these are men and women who were inspired in their own moments to write and compose repertoire that I think even in their wildest dream, they would never imagine that 300 years later, here we would be, exploring it and enjoying it and loving it. And we couldn't imagine our lives without it.
It's true.
That's very true. So you touched on that something inspired these things to be created. And I know in past interviews, you've kind of mentioned that you find your own inspiration sort of everywhere and in many things. I'm going to be a little city-centric here. How would you say your time in Nashville has influenced you? I mean, you and your family have been here for, as you said, quite some time. And I know you've spoken a lot about the musicians you work with. But if there's anything you want to add on to that.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to be a music director of a symphony orchestra. It's another one to be the music director of a symphony orchestra in a city that proudly calls itself Music City. It's a different set of skills when that happens.
I can imagine.
And I have to say that I remember, when you come in as music director and you want to promote music and, music is important. It's like, duh, this is Nashville. I mean, everybody, your neighbors, your friends, everybody somehow, directly or indirectly, are involved with music. And this is an audience, this is a city of people that cherishes music of every genre. I mean, really. I mean, that's when I first got here, just walk down Broadway. There's live music everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, try finding post-concert a quiet place to go have a nice quiet dinner. No, there's going to be live music. This is Nashville. And very early on, that was something that was incredibly exciting to me because I was a former drummer, I just love all types of music. You know, if you get into my car, it's going to be heavy metal or prog rock, or if my kids were little, Disney Channel. But I mean, I hear everything, you know, salsa, merengue, jazz. I mean, I'm just a very musically curious person. And the greatest, I would say, joy of being a music director in a town like Nashville is that I've gotten to know a lot of music royalty that calls Nashville home, and people that I have admired for years, and all of a sudden they happen to be neighbors and friends. And for me, as a music director of a symphony orchestra, it was trying to find common ground of what we could do to share the stage. What excuse could I create for me to make music with this person? And out of that came, I think, some of the most interesting projects that were very Nashville specific, whether it was Ben Folds, or whether it was Bela Fleck, or Edgar Meyer, or Victor Wooten, or any of the many people that called Nashville home. I was always looking for that opportunity to share. And that makes me very proud because we kind of were the lab testing these things out. Banjo? There's no banjo in classical music. Well, guess what? By now, Bela has 3 banjo concertos.
I believe it, yeah.
I mean, he's written 3 because after we did the first one, now every orchestra in the world wanted Bela to play a soloist. So this was created in Nashville, you know, and then it became, this was our gift, our export to all the other orchestras, and actually opened the door for him and for Ben and people like them to kind of have a second career as symphonic soloists.
Oh,
and
marvelous.
I'm very proud of that. I mean, the most recent thing I did with Bela, we did during COVID. I can't remember. We were having dinner, and he told me that he's always wanted to do Rhapsody in Blue on the banjo.
Huh. Why not?
And, you know, I actually thought he was joking, but I said, okay. And I think I may have a little too much to drink. And I said, okay, if you do it, I'll conduct it.
That is also a very Nashville story.
It is.
And he did it. So we opened our season with Rhapsody in Blue, rewritten for banjo. Where else can you do that but Nashville?
Music.
And we're not afraid to experiment. There is nothing written in the traditions that you can't do these things. And having that freedom, artistic freedom, it's a blessing to be in a city like Nashville that allows me, and also on top of that, the musicians, they go like, of course, it's Nashville. I mean, you can't imagine going maybe to a more traditional, you don't do that. We've never done that. No, I think, why not?
Yeah.
Have you seen that guy play? Yeah, I would like to see that.
Push the envelope.
And so, yeah, of the many things you look back, and it was experimenting. Whether it was going to be successful or not, we don't. All I knew is that I wanted to find an opportunity to work with him as with many other artists around here. And that is particular to Nashville. And it's very unique. And I know that that's one of the things I'm going to miss the most about living here, running into my colleagues, you know, in different parts of the city, whether it's a restaurant or the mall or, you know, I'm going to miss that.
Were there any musicians that you didn't work with you always wish you had?
The list would be too long. And I can tell you there's pieces of the repertoire that I don't think I'll have enough years in my life to be able to do. I mean, there's the repertoire is really infinite when you think about it. And every season when I start planning, you know, the programming and what makes it into a season, when you think of, you know, 20 concerts, 3 pieces, I mean, it's very limited. So there's a lot of stuff that keeps falling off, you know, on the wayside. And I may have an idea now, and then I kind of forget about it. And then I go back 5 years and say, you know what, this is the time to do it. So a lot of it has to do with just the perfect timing. And you hope that all of the pieces fall into place, because there are many things that you have no control. Budgeting, scheduling, logistics. But when they all come together, it can be quite magical.
I bet.
Truly. And you've been with Nashville during so many tumultuous events. I mean, the
flood,
flood,
yeah.
COVID, passing of Maestro Schermerhorn.
The bombing on Christmas Day a couple of years ago. A little bit of everything.
Goodness.
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah. Oh, COVID was...
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that the whole opened in 2006, and then we had the financial crash in 2008.
Right.
Just less than 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
which was devastating not only for the U.S. economy, but for the symphony itself, which a lot of the funding for the hall was done pre-2008 and with realities that we never thought would happen. And when that happened, it created a very difficult, put the orchestra in a very precarious financial situation just because all of the mathematical funding planning happened in a world that no longer existed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we're trying to struggle out of that 2 years later, 2010, in May,
Mm-hmm.
we get the flood, which basically kicks us out of the hall. On top of the problems that we were having financially, that, of course, we had insurance, but that didn't cover everything. And the loss of revenue of being out of our hall for 7-8 months.
Mm.
So all of these things, in many ways, you have no control over. It's one thing if, you're having mismanaged. No, these were literally acts of God.
Yeah.
That we had to literally maneuver. But although things were dark for a while and it was very difficult, I thought it brought out the best, not only in the institution, but I think it also brought out the best in the community because people rallied around us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be here talking to you if the city, with their generosity, hadn't stepped up and helped us navigate this, which went on for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Just as I said, just the reality of looking back to that 2008 crash, that had repercussions for over a decade.
Yeah.
And we were not immune to that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, COVID. But on top of everything, even with all of these curves that we were thrown, I always think that the orchestra came out swinging home runs because this morning I had a rehearsal and they're sounding better than ever.
Hmm.
And I think in the end, the one thing that kept us focused was the music. In the end, that's all. That's what we know how to do, and that's what we were continuing to bring to Nashville in our beautiful, fantastic concert hall.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is looking back, shows you the resilience of not only the Nashville Symphony as an institution, but Nashville itself.
Mm-hmm. You can always rely on music in the toughest of times, that's for sure.
We're very lucky that, in happy or sad times, music provides comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And God knows that we've gone through our share of that and brings you closer together to your colleagues that you share the stage with.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful and certainly very Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to follow that up with any other questions. I did want to ask, and this is part personal curiosity, and it involves a little bit of detail for our listeners. So it's my understanding you started the season September 13th and 14th with a performance of Mahler's Symphony No. 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same piece that closed your first season with the Nashville Symphony in 2010, I believe. And then for your kind of swan song with the symphony, you're performing his monumental Symphony No. 8, Symphony of 1,000 with the Nashville Symphony Chorus, and the Vanderbilt Youth Choirs. And so I just have a curiosity. You sort of marked your beginning and ending in Nashville with his work. And is there anything in particular about, his particular musical tradition that sort of speaks to that?
Well, Gustav Mahler is one of my, I would say, favorite composers, but he has a very limited output. When you think of Mozart's 41 symphonies and Haydn's 104 and Beethoven's 9 symphonies, plus all the operas and chamber music, Mahler was his day job, he was a conductor during his lifetime. He lived from 1860 to 1911, died at age 50, very young. And he was an opera conductor. And on the side, he was a composer. But everybody knew him as the greatest conductor of his day, with huge, high standards. He even came to America, was music director in the Metropolitan Opera and the New York Philharmonic. He changed jobs like every 2 months because he was such a perfectionist and such a maestro in the mold of like the most demanding, screaming, that he only lasted usually. So, he had jobs literally like 50 jobs in his lifetime before they got rid of him.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he came to America to be at the Metropolitan Opera, and that lasted about 3 months before they fired him. And then he went, because he was unrelenting, he went to the New York Philharmonic next door. And that was his last job, by the way. Before he went back to Vienna, he was feeling ill, and he died at age 15 in Vienna. But because of the fact that he had a day job, we called him a summer composer. He only really composed in the summer when the opera houses were dark. So altogether, we have, depending on how you count, 10 and a half symphonies and 3 sets of songs. That's it. That's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Compare that to Mozart's 41 and the operas and Beethoven. I mean, this guy, and yet, even with that very limited output, we think of him in the same venue as, Beethoven and Brahms and Stravinsky. So there's something very special about him, that what he wrote was very biographical. This was a man that was an expert at tragedy. He was the oldest of 14 siblings, 8 of whom died in infancy.
Oh.
So this was a man that tragedy was very close to him. Both his roommates from the Vienna Conservatory committed suicide. There was something about Mahler. His youngest daughter at age 3 died of scarlet fever.
Oh, man.
His wife, Alma, who was in itself kind of her own piece of work in her own way, had become unfaithful to him. And so this man, all of these challenges, professionally and personally, he put them in his music. And I think that is the reason why his music is so widely accepted. He's the only composer that I can think of whose entire works, all 14 of them, are in the repertoire. Beethoven can say that. Mozart cannot say that. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know Mozart's 13th symphony. Nobody plays that. And there are pieces by Beethoven that nobody plays.
Mm-hmm.
But Mahler, all of it, are in the repertoire. So there's something that I feel there's a connection, relevance. And maybe because he was a conductor himself, when you look at a score, you look at it from not a composer's point of view, but from a conductor's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very specific about what he wanted. I mean, all his markings are, you can almost hear him screaming at the orchestra and putting it on the score. So there's no questions. I mean, his favorite word that he used in all his scores is nicht. Don't something that you can almost hear him screaming. Don't rush, don't drag, don't smile, don't. And on top of that is music that is so challenging to play that musicians adore the challenge. So this is a composer that I need to do at least a couple of symphonies every year. And I find it's also a wonderful way to showcase the virtuosity of an orchestra, because Mahler really puts the musicians through the ringers. I mean, it's very difficult music to play, individually and as an ensemble. And there's no better gauge when you hear something like this, which is a spectacle. He uses massive forces, the Symphony of 1,000. I mean, he was an opera conductor. Barnum and Bailey.
Yep.
In symphony style.
Mm-hmm.
So as a conductor, I mean, it's the best seat in the house. So I program it, and I'm sure that over the next couple of decades, in whatever I have left in my career, I will continue championing it. And Nashville, I think, has been very fortunate that we have such a fantastic orchestra that we can tackle any of his symphonies very easily, and the choir as well.
Very good.
I love that. I feel like that touches on so much that we've sort of discussed, about the musicians you work with and their sort of importance and core with the symphony, and, the being surrounded by tragedy, but bringing music through to, create something that is overwhelming in a good way.
But even, as I said, even music that was written 150 years ago is still very much relevant. I mean, we haven't changed much as human beings. Yeah, we may have our iPhones and all that, but the things that inspire us and the things that we fear, it hasn't changed much.
No.
And
Really
that's why I
hasn't.
think this music is still as relevant now as it was 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Truly.
Same impact. Mm-hmm.
So I do have a final question for you that is definitely more of a wrap-up question. But I did want to give you the opportunity, if anything has occurred to you, if you're sort of here with us talking about your history in Nashville, and it's like, actually, I would really like to say this to be a tiny part of my oral history in Nashville.
Well, for me, it was the perfect time for me to take over this position. And honestly, I really was hoping that this would come my way. When I first came to Nashville to guest conduct the orchestra when Maestro Skemmerhorn passed away, I came back, as I said, the next season. And by that time, there was a hole in the ground in the hall. And I remember having a couple of hard hat tours with Alan Valentine. And he was telling me, oh, here's going to be this. And one of the things he says, like, and here's going to be the music director suite. And it was me and my wife and our two daughters who at the time were, 5 and 3. And so I'm going there, watching this and walking in the abstract, I guess. And of course, after working with the orchestra, that they were so good, I said, wow, I mean, this would be such a great project. And I did a job interview at the Hilton for another orchestra. They came to interview me. I won't say, but another orchestra came to Nashville when I was conducting. They rented one of the conference rooms and were actually offering me this position. And all I can remember, I mean, at the time I had nothing sure with the Nashville Symphony. I mean, this was a position. It was actually a pretty good orchestra. But I think they made a mistake because the conference room had a view of the Skimmerhorn being built. And even as they were talking to me, I just kept looking out the window and going, but that would be nice. But there was nothing sure. I was one of several candidates. And I actually turned it down. It was a Hail Mary almost, in the hopes that, and I remember having this conversation with my wife. I said, am I out of my mind? I mean, it's a very good paying job, and I'm turning it down on a possibility. And it paid off. So at the time, as I said, my daughters were very little. By the time we moved here, we built our house in Brentwood. We moved here. Our daughters were in 3rd and 1st grade. So in the life of a traveling musician, something that you hope is to provide some sort of stability for your family.
Absolutely.
And this was absolutely the perfect time for us that we moved to Nashville. The girls were going to have a home base. They started going to school 3rd grade, 1st grade. I was going to start my relationship with the orchestra while guest conducting elsewhere. But this was always home. And it still is home. And I am part of this community very proudly. And my kids who have now gone on to college and graduated, this is home. All of their high school and middle school friends are here. So there's always going to be this connection. And who would have thought? I mean, my wife was from Costa Rica, like me. We would have never thought when we got married that somehow we would end up in Nashville, of all places. But yet it became a reality for us. And really, I could not imagine a better place for us, And although we may be moving just because of the traveling musician part of it, we can't disconnect with the city. And I know that we're going to keep coming back here very often, even on personal trips. How can we not? Too many friends, too many people that even if I may not even tell the orchestra I'm coming, I may just do my own thing. We did have a wonderful life here in Nashville outside of the orchestra. And watching how the city has changed.
Absolutely.
It has been, it's been pretty amazing to witness how this city has evolved so much and watching how the orchestra has remained a vital part of it. And that is something that makes me immensely proud, that even with all of the things that are happening around the city, which there's a lot, the symphony and the Skimmerhorn Symphony Center continue to be one of the crown jewels of this community.
Truly.
Yeah. Is there a reason why now that this is your final season? Any particular answer to that? Why now you're retiring or stepping down from?
Because they know the musicians know all my jokes by now.
Oh,
listen, you're laughing, but that's really, after a while, as a conductor, I remember having this discussion about even with the family. Okay, so I'm finishing my current contract. And okay, so what do the next 5 years look like? Okay, so it's a very valid question.
Absolutely.
And I remember kind of like thinking, okay, I mean, there's something I was talking about change, something comfortable about, I'll just keep going. But then all of a sudden I had a moment, post-COVID especially, as I said, the world has changed. There was a moment where I kind of said, okay, so what do the next 5 years look like? In this new environment, what am I going to do that I haven't done yet? Am I going to have the necessary freedoms that I may have had before? Or is it going to be 5 more years of, what we already know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we had a Zoom call with the family was kind of we had a very nice, with the two daughters and my wife. I was away and I said, listen, we need to talk about this. And my youngest daughter kind of raised, okay, Dad, so I would rather leave 5 years early than 1 hour too late.
It's a good response.
You know?
That's wise.
So, and then to make matters worse, Virginia, our oldest daughter, said, are you there? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There are some days that I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing, the orchestra. And honestly, there are others days like, oh my God, I cannot wait to get out of here. I'm human. I mean, there were times, and I felt it, and I feel, I promise you, the musicians felt like that many times as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything was, we're artists. We're temperamental by nature.
Mm.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a part of me that kind of said, better be early than late.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Don't stay
And because I could not answer myself what the next 5-6 years look like, you know what? And this also was 2 years before my contract expires. So there was a part also, you know what? This will give the orchestra ample time to find my successor while I watch the shop.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And so we kept it under wraps. Me and Alan Valentine and the board chair knew about it. Nobody else, not even the staff, knew about it. And we kind of kept it that this was going to happen. And the question is, so when are we going to announce this to the world? And as the season progressed, I was having meetings with the staff about the future, and I'm like, this is unsustainable. I mean, they're asking me about 3-4 years, and I'm not going to be here. And we're having these meetings, and I'm trying to be like, okay, I cannot let the cat out of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we came to realize, okay, I'm gonna have to say something, because by now the orchestra needs to start planning, and with me being here and they thinking that I'm here, I'm in the way. So we decided at the end of 2 seasons ago that in the last rehearsal with the choir, I would announce it. And it was kind of scary because the week before, we started adding the circle of trust, and more people were finding out about it. We were afraid that it was going to leak, and I was afraid. I wanted this to be under our own terms and not somebody kind of leaking it. And of course, all sorts of why I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So at the end of the last rehearsal, it was funny. I finished, okay, thank you very much. And then Alan Valentine walked on stage, and said, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we have an announcement to make. And I made the announcement. And I remember, from the podium, you have kind of a bird's eye view and there was complete kind of shock that like, wow, I mean, that they did not expect that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, I was going to be leaving at some point, but they didn't expect that day to get the news.
Mm-hmm.
And my family came because I didn't know really what to expect. I there was all sorts of, feelings. And so at the end, as musicians, it happens, you make the announcement and everything, and thank you. And then they kind of started doing, the musicians, we clap with our feet or with their bows. And everybody kind of got like, giving me a nice little, but then very spontaneously, the orchestra actually stood up and they gave me a standing ovation. And it was at that moment that I said, okay, I'm still in time. At that moment, that level of love that I felt from the players after all this long time, I felt, okay, I think I'm still good. Mm-hmm. There's still great mutual respect, admiration. 2 more years, it's going to be great. By now, every concert is going to have an expiration date. So every concert becomes even more special, every rehearsal, Mm-hmm. And trust me, I mean, it's not only myself. I mean, I'm sure the musicians, we all want to move on to that next project. Mm-hmm. And that's, listen, sometimes we tend to think that we own these things. We don't. Mm-hmm. We are the keepers of the flame. We just want to pass it on to the next person. And you don't want to you don't want to overstay your welcome. Mm-hmm. And that's very hard to tell sometimes. Very, very difficult. I found it. And for me, fortunately, I had my family kind of supporting me and telling me what needed to be done. And in many ways, almost by accident, it felt like the timing was right, mm-hmm. And my relationship with the players, I feel, has never been better than now. Just because, again, there is kind of it's a different relationship now.
Absolutely.
And I love watching kind of from afar, the next chapter of the orchestra. So it was trust me, there's a lot of sadness that comes with the decision.
Yeah. Sure.
But at the same time, I am excited for my own future and my family about the next chapter of what's coming in.
Yeah. So. Yeah, definitely. Well, since you brought up jokes, do you have a good one you can share with us?
I may have, I am. So jokes are very instrument specific. And you may end up offending a particular instrument.
Well, I'll give you this preface. I did play trumpet in high school, so if you got a good one, I'll take it.
I can tell you more than jokes. We have anecdotes. It's live music, and anything can happen on live music. So I will have to tell you this. We have the fantastic organ at the Skemmerhorn Symphony Center. I mean, not only the great hall, the great orchestra, but we have the fabulous organ that we've used and recorded. But not many halls have that. So many halls, they bring an electric organ and they plug it in. And when the concertmaster comes out and they have to tune in a note, they're kind of specifically, you have to press this button, that button, and then you press the A to orchestra the tune. But don't press this button because that's like the self-destruct button. I mean, really, apparently, if you've ever seen an organ console, it looks like something out of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was actually witness to this, not in Nashville, but in another orchestra, that the concertmaster came out and guess what? She pressed the wrong button. And it was the button that actually, when she pressed it, the whole machine went dead.
Oh.
And she pressed something that apparently deprogrammed the whole organ. So somebody had to come out with their computer in the concert. And there was another time, speaking of organs, I guess I'm not offending as many because the organ is, they have a great sense of humor. But one time I was in a concert in Europe, and the Alpine Symphony of Richard Strauss, there's a moment where the orchestra kind of stops playing and only the organ is left. So here's the conductor, and the orchestra is playing gloriously, and then he gives this huge cue, complete silence. And you see the conductor kind of like, somebody please play or make something. And I could see the organ player kind of like freaking out and trying. What had happened apparently is that one of the trombone players like moved his chair and unplugged the thing.
Oh, no.
Live performance. And if you ask musicians, orchestra musicians, opera musicians, we live by these things.
Mm-hmm.
These are stories that have been carried. Opera particularly has a potential just because it involves, acting and singers and props. And I did a Tosca one time where Tosca kills Scarpia, the bad guy, and he's lying there on the floor. And this was during a performance I was conducting in the pit. And Floria Tosca is putting these chandeliers around his body. She just murdered him. He was a bad guy. And then one of the greatest phrases in the opera world is when Tosca tells Scarpia as he's laying dead, "E avanti a lui tremava tutta Roma," and in front of you, all of Rome used to tremble.
Oh.
But apparently this poor singer had been laying face down and like taking soot in. And as she said this, he sneezed so big. And what you're doing right now is exactly what 2,500 people in the opera did. So the most tragic moment in the opera became one of the most laughable. Immediately, the curtain was closed. People, this is a moment where it goes like, they were I was laughing. And here's the worst part. So it's like, so this kind of ruined, it was that one performance. And then we get to the third act. And they opened the curtain. We're moving on. It's a different setup. It's 10 years later. And everybody's still laughing. The poor guy, I'm sure, here's what happened. He must have been holding it forever.
Yeah.
And when it finally came out, it
you can't do anything.
An atomic bomb.
Listen, that's what I tell people when they go to live performances. I always say, listen, if you want to hear the piece played the same way, that's why we have recordings.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. With a good bottle of wine, enjoy it.
Yeah.
But when I go to a live performance, I want the adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's an adventure. You don't know how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's... I have a rehearsal. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. And what dictates a great performance from another is not up to me.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we go to concerts all the time. And yes, we're in the same building. We're not at the same concert.
Absolutely.
She's hearing it through her prism,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hearing it through mine. She's a different person from me. And how many times we go to a concert and it's like, she's like, oh my God, this was the greatest thing I've ever, and I'm like, kill me now. And who's right and who's wrong? Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
This is just being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're sitting next to each other. We've been married almost for 30 years, But yeah, we're not at the same concert. And to think otherwise would be to be very arrogant. I'm hearing it through my own echo chamber.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what's so special. And that's why I think fortunately, there's no technology yet that can recreate that personal moment. Whether you go to a museum or you're reading a book or you're listening to a live performance at the Ryman or at the Schermerhorn or the opera, it is yours. You're taking it in. And whether this means something to you or whether it's something that goes away, it's up to the universe. And that to me is why I adore the idea of exploring and going out and, listening and admiring all this incredible art that has been around for, in some cases, even thousands of years. And you take an appreciation for it. And you're seeing it with your eyes in the year 2024. If you ask me again in 2026, I'll probably see it with different eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
That's important.
Yeah, always.
You have to.
Well, I don't know if I can finish it any better than that, but any other questions, Grace?
No. Thank you so much. This has just been incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will kind of finish up with a little bit of a context to say that our boss, who's coincidentally also retiring, so by the time that we share this on our website, he'll be retired. But his connection with the Schermerhorn is his daughter got married there several years ago, so she's got a background in music. So she was apparently, Ken said she was thrilled that we were doing this interview. So
it's a special place. It's a special place.
Oh, truly.
So beautiful inside, yeah. So that being said, it would be amazing if one day we could get the records of the symphony or something like that in the archives. Wishful thinking.
Potentially, they might have their own archive.
This is true, which I would love to explore.
Truly.
Yeah.
You're listening to this Nashville Symphony archive.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
And yes, thank you again.
Thank you.